I love villains. Who doesn't? They're just so much fun to watch. You know what they say, for every great hero, there's a great villain on the other side of the moral spectrum. Well, I believe that for many memorable villains, there's a memorable musical cue. As such, I've decided to pay tribute to those cues with my list of the top 10 villain musical themes. These choices can come from movies, TV shows, and video games, but to prevent repetition, I've decided on only one theme per franchise. Keep in mind, this is my opinion, as is inevitably the case with any top 10 list. You may disagree with some of the choices. Before we get started though, let's listen to some honorable mentions.
Number 10.
Night on Bald Mountain from Fantasia. This whole movie is radically different from the usual Disney fare. Instead of an overarching plot, we have a series of self-contained segments with the animation complementing different pieces of classical music. One of the most iconic scenes is Night on Bald Mountain, which involves the devilish Chernabog summoning the legions of the dead. Yep, Disney was dark even back then. The music is a work of orchestral art, going from spine-tinglingly quiet to loud and booming. When you listen to it, you really get the sense that something monumental is happening. The way that it builds as the souls are slowly called up from their graves is truly haunting. It then transitions to all-out chaos as they're manipulated by this gargoyle-esque figure with the hellish flames raging around them. There's not much more to say except that it's a beautiful marriage of music and visuals. It's difficult to imagine one without the other, which is why it was so satisfying when this music was used again when you fight the Chernabog in Kingdom Hearts. Now that's what I call authenticity.
Number 9.
Mechagodzilla's theme from Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. As a longtime Godzilla fan, I've always liked the idea of Mechagodzilla. To combat a living natural disaster, it makes sense to build an equally destructive force of machinery. Constructed by a race of alien apes, Mechagodzilla was designed to take over the Earth. Yeah, the cheesy concept is right out of the 70s, and the same can be said for the music. It sounds like something you can dance to, but it also suits the idea, conjuring up images of a well-oiled machine, new, improved, and more efficient. That's exactly what Mechagodzilla is, armed with a slew of weapons and other devices. However, there's also a slight wildness about it, almost like two animals tearing each other apart, which is appropriate for the kaiju battles that this movie features. To me, this soundtrack is an appealing blend of genre cheesiness and technological power.
Number 8.
The Huns theme from Mulan. Jerry Goldsmith was right up there with John Williams when it comes to film and television composers. As such, while the movie itself is fairly solid on its own, the musical score is one of the most striking aspects of Disney's Mulan. And the most intense theme, by far, is the one used for Shan Yu and the Huns, varying from slow and foreboding to fast and frenzied. It sounds exotic and wild, like it would accompany a band of barbarians. Whether it's used to signify their merciless conquest or to emphasize the imposing presence of their leader, this musical cue always works. The tune itself is pretty basic, relying primarily on a few notes, but it doesn't really need to be any more complicated to deliver the impact and sense of raw power that goes perfectly with this film's portrayal of the Huns.
Number 7.
Why So Serious from The Dark Knight. Talk about nails on a chalkboard, and I mean that in a good way. Does that make sense? Probably not. The point is that this eerie track is one of the most distinctive pieces on this list. Exactly the type of off-kilter music that complements the Joker. It starts with a solid minute or two of this. Almost like the score is mirroring the tension that we as the audience feel when the Clown Prince of Crime is about to claim another victim. It then becomes more dynamic and hard-hitting. Immediately letting you know that the Joker and his crew are out and about. The instruments and the style make the whole track slightly off-putting, but not enough to where you don't want to listen to it. A close runner-up would be Bane's theme from The Dark Knight Rises. But it's the Joker's unsettling tune that wins out.
Number 6.
The Swan theme from Dracula. I admit this might be cheating since the song only plays during the opening credits of the 1931 movie, but it just sets the mood and strengthens the atmosphere so much that I had to include it. To be fair, I also like the themes from Horror of Dracula, and Bram Stoker's Dracula. However, even though this piece is technically from the ballet Swan Lake, many people have come to associate it with the Prince of Darkness. And there's a reason for that. Listen to this. It's so calm and pleasant, but at the same time, there's just something vaguely haunting about it, which is exactly what makes it so perfect for Dracula. He lures people into his castle with his charming hospitality before revealing his monstrous nature. The music sounds like it goes with something graceful and pure, making it all the more effective when you know about the bloodthirsty creature that it accompanies.
Number 5.
Perfect Cell's theme from Dragon Ball Z. Man, there are a lot of great tracks in this show. Bruce Faulconer managed to come up with unique themes for so many characters, locations, and concepts that it was hard to pick just one. I could have easily gone with the one for the androids, or Super Boo. But I ultimately decided on this one. For you non-fans out there, Cell is an artificial being who was constructed using the combined cells of the greatest fighters on the planet, most of whom happen to be the main characters. His goal is to absorb 2 androids in order to reach his final form and become quote-unquote perfect. He's basically a crazy science experiment, and that's generally the vibe that this music gives off. It comes across as something that would accompany the exploits of a mad scientist. Having it signify said scientist's greatest creation reaching its full potential is very appropriate, whether it's the slower, more menacing version, or the faster rendition that you can dance to.
Number 4.
One-Winged Angel from Final Fantasy VII Advent Children. Yep, for one of the most popular villains in video game history, we have one of the best pieces of music to ever come out of Final Fantasy. Another freak experiment, Sephiroth was an elite soldier who was unknowingly injected as a fetus with the cells of a world-conquering alien. Don't you just hate when that happens? Driven insane by this knowledge, he eventually decides to fulfill what he believes to be his destiny and take over the world. Now this track just feels epic. The heavy drums, the fast strings, the chorus, all of it hammers home the grand scope and intense atmosphere. Even though I really like the original version found in the game, I've always thought that the one from Advent Children felt bigger and more complete. This piece also has a hint of murderous insanity that makes it somewhat frightening, which could not be more appropriate for this malignant character. It's a powerful piece of music that I look forward to hearing again in the upcoming remake.
Number 3.
The Imperial March from Star Wars. You knew this was coming. I couldn't do a list like this without including one of the most famous tracks in all of film. This is obviously the music used for Darth Vader, and yeah, it's great. It's classic John Williams, perfectly complementing the dark side of the Force. In conjunction, it has a militaristic beat to it, which goes well with the totalitarian empire. It actually sounds like a march, having a very organized yet admittedly catchy rhythm. I was considering filling this spot with the Emperor's theme, but in the end, it's this piece that's more memorable, flawlessly capturing the essence of the antagonists and instantly recognizable to anyone who's not living under a rock.
Number 2.
The Isengard theme from The Lord of the Rings. J.R.R. Tolkien's world and its subsequent adaptations are the stuff of literary and cinematic legend. Among the many strengths of the film series is the exemplary musical score by Howard Shore. Honestly, I could have picked any one of the villainous tracks from these movies. But I ultimately decided on the music for Isengard. Not only is it the most dynamic, but it's also perhaps the most thematically relevant. Tolkien had a clear love and respect for the environment, and a major message of his stories is that nature should be preserved. The treason of Saruman represents the antithesis of that idea. To prepare for war, the hordes of Isengard begin chopping down the trees to fuel the fires of industry. And that's precisely what this music conveys. It has a very cruel and industrial feel. Images of factories, furnaces, and savagery automatically come to mind when listening to it. The heavy use of percussion instruments makes the whole thing seem merciless and unfeeling. On top of that, it just has a great beat that I can tap my foot to.
Number 1.
The Wolf's theme from Peter and the Wolf. You might be wondering, why not something grander and more epic? Well, not only does this theme work exceedingly well on its own as an amazing piece of music, but to me, it represents one of the scariest ideas imaginable, the unseen. In the words of the late great Sir Christopher Lee,
in fact, very often what you don't see is far more effective, frightening, suggestive, erotic than what you do see.
In the story, the wolf is most terrifying when all you know is that it's out there in the forest somewhere, and the music brilliantly enriches that idea. Relying primarily on the French horn, this piece is slow and ominous. It lets you know that something, maybe a wolf, is on the prowl. The fear and sense of menace that come with that knowledge are also excellently captured by the music. Every character in this tale comes with a distinctive theme and instrument, and the wolf has always been my favorite. Even taking that out of the equation though, this piece just sounds like the primal essence of evil. It's foreboding, it's unsettling, it's chilling, it's the #1 villain musical theme. Thanks for watching, feel free to like, subscribe, and/or comment. Until next time.